Hello, Africa and the rest of the world. Welcome to Continental Prime here on News Central Television, reaching you live from Lagos, Nigeria's economic capital. I'm Sulaiman Ahmed, and headlines for this hour. Tunisia's main opposition party calls for dialogue following president's response to citizens' protests. Leader of Tanzania's main opposition party charged with terrorism. Nigeria's central bank bans weekly allocation of foreign exchange to Bureau de Change. Details shortly. We begin in West Africa, where another 4 abducted students of Bethel Baptist High School in Nigeria's northwestern state of Kaduna have regained their freedom. This is in addition to the 28 released a few days ago. News Central's Omolola Olalade has more on this story.
A roller coaster of emotions for parents and freed students of Bethel Baptist Academy, Kaduna State, as 32 students in total were reunited with their families. While some parents rejoiced at seeing their children alive again, some other parents grappled with the bitter realities of an insecure country left to linger too long as their own children remained in captivity.
I'm so happy for what God has done for us. This is our day today. God has started and He will end it. The rest will come back. As God make it for us, He will do it for others.
The joy, I'm overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed. But physically, morally, we do not even see any government official consoling us. We do not see.
Prior to the release of these students, parents of the kidnapped students gathered daily inside the school, crying, praying, and demanding justice. They still hold on to hope that others still held hostage will be released in the coming days.
What happened today is practically the intervention of God, because we have no power to turn the heart of the people who took these children. And they only announced to us, go to so place, you'll find them. We went and found them. At other times, they said things like that, and we never found them. But this time around, we found them. We are hoping that when they call us again, we will continue to find them.
While mass school abductions have increased significantly since 2014, when the Boko Haram extremists abducted the Chibok girls, education stakeholders, including the government, must not relent in efforts to ensure the country's education sector in the northern region is redeemed. Omolola Ololade reporting for News Central.
Now for more on this is Captain Umar Ali, retired. He's a security expert. Thank you for your time, and thanks for taking time out of your workout session to join us to look at this very interesting development in Nigeria. Now, quickly here, while Nigerians welcome the recent release of abducted students, albeit in batches and trickles, parents have been concerned about the insistence of ransom being paid. But for these parents, they say no ransom was paid. So how do you see this new development or this new twist?
When you see a situation where parents gladly having their children insist no ransom was paid, it shouldn't come as a surprise. Don't forget, there are still other children. There are still other children being held in captivity. So the parents may not want to make any statements or come short of their agreement with these kidnappers to the detriment of other children who are still within the kidnappers' dens. But then none of this is coming as a surprise. This was all foretold, and you will agree with me, Suleiman, because some of the time we did this together. Time was when 4 years ago I said the threats were becoming bolder. And indeed, we have seen over the past 2-3 years that they're getting bolder. They're not only going after government officials, senior military officers and their families, they are going after children too. They're going after children.
So quickly here, you know, time was when some thought that the government of Nigeria was going to put in place a safe school program. At the moment, Kaduna State government has ordered the closure of schools as a means to stop the spate of kidnappings in the state. However, some argue that this is a defeatist move by the Kaduna State government.
Not only defeatist, it rubbishes the majesty, the reckoning, and even the confidence the people will have in government. Don't forget, some of our politicians seem to have forgotten what the social contract is all about. The social contract is premised on citizenry giving up certain rights, the right to self-defense, the rights to so many other things to government so that there can be order. Now, where government has decided to chop down schools or shut down schools because they cannot seemingly find a solution to what some very worthless goat herders are doing in the bushes, then you're beginning to wonder who is an asset to the state. Is it the goat herder in the forest or the child who is in school, as in tomorrow's people? Who is an asset to the nation? So you are just looking at a government that is engaging in subterfuge because they are a bit out of contention. They are a bit out of contention with what to do.
You know, what is Nigeria dealing with at the moment? The bandits, are they what you call Boko Haram? You know, Boko Haram, or you're dealing with, you know, some other terrorist group? Because a few days ago, a fighter jet was shot down, suggesting that these bandits or kidnappers may have some surface-to-air missile to bring down an aircraft.
That question is indeed key, but what I try to comprehend with right now is I cannot begin to imagine our law enforcement, legislators, politicians actually don't see what is plainly stated in broad daylight. Look at it this way, Slay. If artists can do a collaboration, what makes you think criminals cannot do a collabo? Look, we've been through this. We've been through this. Our people, our politicians, our legislators, our governments, they know where to find help right here within Nigeria. But somehow that ego, that gregariousness, that sitting in your high saddle that comes with political office and probably law enforcement agencies is what is giving these little riffraffs and urchins in the bushes the guts to do what they do. As I told you, 5 years ago, we did this together. I told you, from my dashboard at Goldwater, they were getting bolder. We've seen them pin governors down. We've seen them attempt, in fact, they've turned military officers to rabbits now. They take military officers out, they take their wives out. So exactly what are we talking about?
You know,
solutions are perfect.
Before we quickly wrap this, talking about solutions, I recall then years ago, you had also warned Nigerians about the movement of these people from Nigeria's northeast. Now we have seen them in Nigeria's northwest, and we've seen also pockets of kidnappings in the southern part of Nigeria. Is it safe to say these same people are making incursion towards Nigeria's southern region?
Of course they are. It's a lucrative business for them. I recall I once made it from Seme border to Aflao, and I never went through the roads. I never went through the roads. I did it with a map and a compass, and in some time where I could find network, Google Earth. Now you're talking about people who cannot even spell pen. Some of them cannot spell the guns they hold. They are illiterate, they're not educated, but they know that, you know what, if we can herd some school children in, is the fastest way to make 100 million. It's lucrative, and our space, our nation's space, seems to be the ground for making that kind of money. So if they come in and they trend from the southwest down the northeast, you just mention it. They keep going as far as it gets until we flush them out.
So quickly here, let's wrap this up. What should the solution be now for a country that has been fighting insurgency for over a decade now?
For over a decade now, 11 or so years, or even more, we've been fighting insurgency. And we seem to be fighting insurgency with verbiages. We seem to be fighting insurgency looking outwards. These insurgents take notes. The solutions to insurgency are in here. I tend to tell people that if the insurgent's mother is a woman like mine, we have what it takes to pocket him. It's left for the law enforcement agencies to swallow their ego and look inwards. Nobody wants to antagonize them. We just want to make our home and country safer. Whether they can do it or not is not about verbiages and whatever. It's about what the people see on ground at the outlays of our country, in the mud huts and the villages. Those places we call ungoverned spaces, are they really ungoverned? That's my own solution. If they know where to find solutions, if they want solutions, I'll leave it at that for the evening, Sulay.
Well, retired Captain Blade Umar Ali, many thanks for speaking to us. Now, in a neighboring Cameroon, suspected Boko Haram terrorists had killed 5 Cameroonian soldiers and a civilian during a raid on a military outpost in the far north region of the country. On Tuesday, local authorities said that the attack was carried out on an army post in the village of Zege. Now, the attack follows a raid around 50 kilometers north of Zege on Saturday, which the Islamic State claimed. Let's return to West Africa, where the president of Ivory Coast, Alassane Ouattara, has welcomed his predecessor and rival Laurent Gbagbo for the first time since the country's deadly 2010-2011 conflict. Both leaders exchanged pleasantries as they met at the presidential palace in the Ivorian economic capital, Abidjan. In the last month of his rule, between 2000 and 2011, Gbagbo rejected defeat by Ouattara in a presidential ballot. The ensuing conflict claimed more than 3,000 lives after Gbagbo was ousted and later faced charges of crimes against humanity at The Hague, of which he eventually was acquitted. Now, moving from the security situation in Cameroon, moving on, we go to the north of the continent, where the protests recorded in Tunisia last weekend have led to the president sacking the prime minister, dismissing 2 ministers associated with the prime minister, and the suspension of parliament. President Kais Saied was accused by the country's most prominent political party, Ennahda, of staging a coup. Now Ennahda is calling for dialogue. The party has also told its supporters not to take part in demonstrations. Ennahda officials say they don't want to escalate the situation. Earlier, we spoke with Rabia Aloui, a journalist and environmental activist, to unpack the latest development in the North African country.
The situation is confusing, and the democracy might be at risk, especially after yesterday protest in front of the parliament. The Tunisian street is divided today. Also, the political parties are divided between who are against President Kais Said's decision and who are supporting him, especially young people. And I think the future of Tunisia today is blurring. We don't know yet what will happen. At the same time, I think the freedom of express is threatened, especially yesterday after police officers entered to the office of Al Jazeera and prohibited our colleague, the journalist working for Al Jazeera. They prohibited them from covering the protest. So I think we need to keep a vigilant eye today. The parliament, the speaker of the parliament, the president of the parliament denounced this action, and he described the initiative of the president as a dictatorship and a constitutional dictatorship. At the same time, protests who took the street on Sunday, they welcomed President Kais Said's decision and they described him as the main state and as a hero, as they demanded the fall of the regime. If we focus on the slogan used on Sunday's protest, we can see that the same slogan that we heard a decade ago during the Tunisian revolution are now coming back. Protesters called for the fall of the regime. So we can here imagine the frustration and the anger of Tunisian people. That's
Rabib Aloui there earlier. Next door in Libya, at least 57 people have reportedly drowned off the coast of Libya, making it the latest large-scale loss of life involving migrants trying to reach Europe. The International Organization for Migration in Libya, Federico Soda, described the incident as horrifying. The IOM said survivors told its staff that 20 women and 2 children were among those who died. The cause of the accident near the Libyan port of Homs is still unclear. Now, in East Africa, all uniformed personnel formerly deployed to Darfur have been withdrawn from the Sudanese region. Atul Khari, the Under-Secretary General for Operational Support, disclosed this today while giving an update of events in the region to the United Nations Security Council. Khari said those who remain are staff involved in the liquidation and those that have constituted a uniformed guard unit. Khari's update comes after a recent visit to Sudan. The Under-Secretary General added that he is grateful to the countries concerned in acknowledging the status of persons seeking asylum.
This task involved the repatriation of almost 6,000 troops and police, as well as separation of almost 1,200 staff. It also involved consultation with all relevant stakeholders to ensure that uniformed members who expressed a desire to not return for reasons related to international protection needs were processed by the refugee authorities of the government of Sudan. I am grateful to the countries concerned in acknowledging that the status of these individuals in seeking asylum is a humanitarian act, not based on political considerations. I should note that the primary responsibility to provide security for these UN assets and personnel rests with the government of Sudan, and I am pleased to report that it is prepared to take necessary actions and do so in coordination with the Guard unit.
Now, the leader of Tanzania's main opposition party, Freeman Mbowe, has been charged with terrorism without his family or legal representatives. State prosecutor Esther Martin said the charges, which amount to crimes of economic sabotage, do not allow for bail under Tanzania law. Martin said the terror charges did not relate to the 29-year-old's planned activities in Mwanza, but alleged offenses last year in a different part of Tanzania. Mbowe, who's chairman of the Chadema party, was arrested last week, and other party members in the Lake Victoria port city of Mwanza ahead of a planned public meeting to demand constitutional reform. Tunde Lissu, who was Chadema's candidate in the 2020 presidential election, described the charges as bogus. Now, 2 weeks after widespread looting and unrest broke out in South Africa, officials are still retrieving stolen goods. Police and soldiers conduct raids on communities, including the Nguni Hostel, a communal living compound in Vozuru's town, south of Johannesburg. Now, items recovered during the raid include groceries, cash, alcohol, electrical appliances, and furniture. Authorities say on Monday that police seized goods worth 8 million rands in Cape Town. The items are believed to have been stolen from a pawn shop. Staying in Southern Africa, the president of Botswana, Mokgweetsi Masisi, has deployed troops to Mozambique as part of the Southern African Development Community Standby Force. A total of 296 BDF soldiers have been deployed to Mozambique, in addition to the 70 who departed on Sunday. Mozambique has for years grappled with insurgents who recently killed hundreds of people in Palma, in the northern capital Gander province. When the news returns, we'll have updates from the coronavirus pandemic across Africa, starting with a look at Tunisia's vaccination campaign. Stay with us. Well, if you just joined us, you're welcome. You're watching Continental Prime here on News Central Television, reaching you live from Lagos, Nigeria's economic capital. Now let's continue from the west of Africa, where Nigeria's federal government has pledged to reduce its total projected forest sector emission by 20%. Now this, according to the Ministry of Environment, is approximately about 150 metric tons of carbon dioxide. Nigeria's Minister of Environment made this known in the country's capital, Abuja, while launching the country's REDD+ strategy, which aims to mitigate the effects of climate change in Nigeria. Our correspondent Amadi Uyi has more on this.
According to available data, forests cover about 30% of the world's land area. Between 1990 and 2016, the world, however, lost about 1.3 million square kilometers of forest, an area larger than South Africa. The World Bank also estimates that about 10 million square kilometers of forest have been lost since the beginning of the 20th century. A 2015 study in the journal Nature exposes the devastating effects of deforestation on the world's forest reserves, as it reveals that about 46% of trees have been felled in the last 50 years. This has continued to escalate the effects of climate change as regions around the world continue to experience extreme weather conditions.
Our land and our ocean are under threat from climate change, but can also contribute to the solutions. Although we all know this, forests, which also harbour vital biodiversity, remain highly vulnerable. Globally, an area of forest the size of the UK is lost every year.
While Nigeria's federal government has joined the League of Nations, committed to reducing the effects of climate change on its citizens, experts agree a necessary step to take is to reduce deforestation and its effects, which continue to impact citizens negatively.
Sustainable management of Nigeria's forests and ecosystems can reduce emissions while promoting sustainable livelihoods and a climate-resilient national economy.
It is noted that deforestation affects economic activities and threatens the livelihoods and cultural strategy of forest-dependent people. It also reduces the supply of forest products and causes situations like flooding, soil nutrients loss, desertification, and soil erosion.
At this launch of the National REDD+ strategy document in the nation's capital, Abuja, experts say the initiative will protect Nigeria's forest reserves, mitigate the effects of climate change, and establish a climate-resilient society.
REDD+ seeks to curb climate change by stopping the destruction of forests.
Nigeria's vision for implementing REDD+ is to establish a climate-resilient economy through sustainable management of forests, to enhance carbon sink and reduce GHG emission by at least 20% by the year 2050.
Nigeria's Minister of Environment, while assuring that Nigeria's government will do all it can to ensure the REDD+ initiative is a success, says it will work to reduce the effects of carbon emissions into the environment.
Over the next decade, we propose to reduce projected total forest sector emission by 20%, or approximately 150 metric tons of CO2 through the implementation of REDD+ strategies and programs and other activities.
With experts agreeing that tree cover alone can provide about 23% of climate mitigation necessary Nigerians will be hoping that the Red Plus initiative is a success. From Abuja, Amadine Uyi, News Central Television.
Now to our continued coverage of the coronavirus pandemic across Africa. Our first stop is Tunisia, where more than 1 million persons have now been vaccinated against COVID-19. In a statement on Tuesday, the Ministry of Health has said that more than 963,000 have received 2 doses, while over 117,000 who had contracted the virus received only 1 dose. The statement adds that over 2.19 million laboratory tests have been carried out in the North African country so far. The Health Ministry also reported 1,608 new COVID-19 infections and 164 deaths. We move to Nigeria, where 10 new cases of the Delta COVID-19 variant have been recorded in the country. The country's infectious disease agency announced the discoveries during a ministerial press briefing in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. The Center for Disease Control notes that the variant has been detected in over 90 countries. Minister of Health, Dr. Osagie Hanire, also warned that Nigeria is at risk of registering high incidences of the Delta variant due to neglect of preventive measures at airports and other entry points. In Kenya, the COVID-19 positivity rate recorded on Tuesday shot up to 14.2% as 976 new infections were recorded. The latest figures were from an analysis of more than 6,000 samples tested over the past 24 hours. Kenya's positivity rate has been above 10% for the last few days, standing at 13.9% on Saturday, 12.2% on Sunday, and 13.5% on Monday. The Health Ministry said the youngest patient was 1 year old, while the oldest was 99. Now, the ministry said more than 1,200 patients had been admitted to health facilities across the country, while over 3,600 patients were being treated at home. In the meantime, neighboring Tanzania has been commended for its handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Africa CDC, gave the commendation on Tuesday. John Nkengasong, the Africa CDC director, made the remarks during talks with Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan at the State House and commercial capital of Dar es Salaam. He pledged Africa CDC's support to Tanzania in fighting the pandemic that has caused devastating consequences across the world. The commendation came ahead of Tanzania's official launch of the COVID-19 vaccination campaign by President Hassan on Wednesday. In South Africa, more than 370 more people have succumbed to the coronavirus, while over 770 more people were infected. Now, this makes South Africa's COVID-19 death toll above 70,000, while more than 7,000 infections confirmed infections since last March to over 2.39 million. The number of new infections recorded on Tuesday was higher than Monday's recent cases, but it is still represented at a lower case average than the past 7 days. Water, sanitation, and hygiene experts have expressed worry over the recent cholera outbreak in Nigeria's federal capital, Abuja. They say over 700 persons have been infected, so the need to review water quality in the country's capital. Some of them spoke to reporters in Abuja as the federal government and the United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, pledged to form a partnership to improve the quality of water available to the public. They also asked all stakeholders to form a common front to tackle the recent cholera outbreak in the capital to reduce the pressure on health facilities in Abuja.
And save our already overstretched health sector from being further overwhelmed as COVID is still very much with us.
What we need to do now is the quality of water, even the availability of water in our homes, and the quality of the same water. Cholera is not just water alone. Temperature plays a high premium on it. So water quality itself is very important, and the availability of the good water. I think the environment is also an important indicator of good health. So we have to keep our environment clean, our houses well ventilated, and then a lot of people who are already crammed together should be separated. They make water available, and that water must be of good quality.
Still ahead, Unicef is calling on governments to reopen schools as soon as possible. We have more on this and other stories after the break. Join us again. North and South Korea have restored a communication hotline that was cut off by Pyongyang last June. The South Presidential Office said the leaders of both countries have agreed to rebuild trust and improve ties. The Blue House adds that both leaders have exchanged multiple personal letters since April. The two Koreans remain technically at war because the 1950 and 1953 Korean War ended with an armistice rather than a peace treaty. Meanwhile, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has welcomed the resumption of the Panmunjom and Inter-Korean Liaison Office communication channels. Deputy spokesperson for the Secretary General, Farhan Haq, told reporters in Geneva today that Mr. Guterres also applauded the reconnection of the military hotline.
The Secretary General fully supports the continued efforts of the parties towards the improvement of their relationship, sustainable peace, and complete and verifiable denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
The United Nations Children's Fund is calling on governments to reopen schools as soon as possible. UNICEF spokesperson James Elder made the call today during a press conference where he notes that education, safety, friends and food have been replaced by anxiety, violence and teenage pregnancy. Elder told reporters that more than 600 million children in countries not on academic break are still affected by school closures and a 5-point call for action due to the COVID-19 pandemic. He also called on governments and donors to protect the education budget, adding that enrollment should be extended to children out of school pre-COVID. The Central Bank of Nigeria has banned the weekly allocation and sale of foreign exchange to Bureau de Change operators. The governor of the bank, Godwin Emefiele, announced on Tuesday, while briefing reporters on the outcomes of the Monetary Policy Committee meeting in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. Emefiele accused BDC operators of facilitating grafts, illicit financial flows, and money laundering. He also accused international organizations, development finance organizations, and embassies of patronizing BDC operators to fund local operations, contravening Nigeria's foreign exchange regulations.
Millions of dollars per transaction. Despite the fact that Nigeria is the only country in the world today where a central bank sells dollar directly to Bureau de Change operators. Operators in the Nigeria's Bureau de Change segment have not reciprocated the bank gesture to help maintain price stability in that market. Whereas the bank has an understanding with Bureau de Change operators that they make a small margin from sale of the US dollar allocated to them per week, they have reneged and become somewhat greedy, recalcitrant, with abnormally high profits from these sales, while ordinary Nigerians have been left to feel the pain and therefore.
Nigeria's central bank chief the Godwin Emefiele. Now, the biggest and most modern dredger in the Middle East has landed in Egypt to maintain and improve the North African country's artificial waterway. The head of the Suez Canal Authority, Osama Rabi, said the cutter dredger arrived from Rotterdam. The more than 29,000 kilowatt heavy-duty rock dredger Hussein Tantawi was made by Dutch shipbuilder Royal IHC. Now, the vessel can dredge to 35 meters, while the Suez Canal is 24 meters deep. Its arrival comes after a similar vessel, Mohab Mamesh, was delivered to the SCA in March. Now, the global economy is growing, but widening gaps between advanced economies and many emerging markets and developing economies is a concern. This is according to the latest World Bank World Economic Outlook released on Tuesday by the International Monetary Fund. IMF's chief economist Gita Gopinath said global growth is forecast at 6% for 2021, unchanged from the previous forecast in April. She, however, adds that the composition of the forecast has changed.
Fault lines remains the pandemic. If we see newer virus variants, which are far more transmissible, like the Delta variant that we're seeing right now, in a world where vaccine access remains highly inequitous, that will have a big hit to the economic recovery. Another major risk and fault line is with respect to financial conditions. If inflation in, for instance, the US were to be more persistent than we expected, that could lead to a faster tightening in monetary policy, and that could then again disrupt financial market conditions. So these are some of the major risks we are concerned about.
We have more business news for you. Let's now join Lekon Onabanjo.
Hello and welcome to Business News on NC Continental Prime. I am Lekon Onabanjo. A Dutch court has ruled that a $500 million stake in the Portuguese oil company GAP, linked to Angolan ex-first daughter Isabel dos Santos, must be handed over to Angola, according to lawyers for Angola's state oil company. Dos Santos, a business tycoon who had been noted as one of Africa's richest women, ran oil giant Sonangol from 2016 until 2017, when her father's four-decade rule ended. The acquisition of the stake was tainted by illegality, enabling Ms. Isabel dos Santos to reap an extraordinary financial gain to the detriment of Sonangol and consequently of the state of Angola, according to Netherlands International Arbitration Tribunal. However, she has denied any wrongdoing and says she is the subject of a political witch hunt by Angola's new leadership. Let's now tell you that Zimbabwean inflation slowed to double digits in July for the first time in more than 2 years. Zimbabwean Consumer Prices Index is now 56.37% from a year earlier, compared to 106.6% in June 2020, according to the Zimbabwe National Statistics Agency via a statement on Tuesday. The last time the Southern African nation's inflation rate was not in triple digits was in May 2019. Costs climbed 2.56% in the month. Inflation started spiraling out of control towards the end of 2018 and peaked at 837.5% almost 2 years later. The acceleration has been largely due to a number of missteps that led to a cash scarcity in the country. Its currency is comprising bond notes, theoretically pegged to the dollar, and an electronic currency known as RTGS dollars, mostly used for commercial transactions, plunged. And away from that, we tell you that Impala Platinum Holdings Zimbabwe unit Zimplats plans to build 2 solar power plants with generation capacity of 185 megawatts to power its operations, according to the country's energy regulator. The Zimbabwe Energy Regulatory Authority said Zimplats, the biggest platinum group metals producer in Zimbabwe, has applied to build a 105 megawatts plant at Ngezi, southwest of Harare. There, it has mines and 2 concentrators and 85 megawatts of nearby cellars where there is a smelter and concentrator. Zimplats, which also jointly owns a smaller platinum miner Mimosa Mining Company, with Simbaye Stillwater, imports its power from Mozambique's Hydro Cahora Bassa. However, the government expects 100 megawatts of electricity to come from new renewable energy projects by the end of this year, and other mining companies are also planning to produce power from solar energy. Now, South Africa's government said it reached an interim pay deal with unions representing a majority of civil servants. This agreement has averted the threat of an imminent strike. The agreement has been signed by the South African Democratic Teachers Union, the National Professional Teachers Organization of South Africa, the Health and Other Services Personnel Trade Union of South Africa, the Public Servants Association of South Africa, and the Democratic Nursing Organization of South Africa, including the Ministry of Public Service and Administration, which said in an email statement on Tuesday. It didn't specify the terms and duration of the deal. We'll let you know that Mango Airlines has suspended all flights and services from Tuesday, July 27, until further notice. Acting Chief Executive William Glovo said that the suspension is due to outstanding payments to air traffic navigation services. Mango told customers to contact it via email to specifically deal with cancellations and voucher-related matters. The airline said that customers should anticipate much longer than the ordinary waiting time for inquiries or emails to be cleared. The suspension of flights and services follow news that Mango will enter business rescue as the airline has been hit by the COVID-19 lockdown and travel restrictions. The interim chief executive said that some Mango staff are still awaiting delayed salaries and that these issues should be addressed in the coming weeks as part of 2.7 billion rands bailouts given to SSA subsidiaries.
And tomorrow's weather to see where we'll have rain, sunshine, or a little bit of both across the continent, because it's beautiful. Our weather desk has it all. And as it this hour, but before we go, let's take another look at the major stories. Tunisia's main opposition party has called for dialogue following President Kais Saied's response to protests by citizens. Leader of Tanzania's main opposition party, Freeman Mbowe, has been charged with terrorism. We also told you that Nigeria's central bank has banned the weekly allocation of foreign exchange to Bureau de change operators. You can follow us for more on our social media. We're at News Central. You can now download our mobile app on the Play Store as well as the App Store. You can also watch News Central live on StarTimes Channel 274, Avio TV, Channel 23, Vision 247, Free TV, and YouTube. Better still, you can go on the website and watch our shows live at newscentral.africa. I'm Sulaiman. Many thanks for watching.